Hi everyone, welcome to the SOP podcast. My name is Rosebella Abok. I am a customer experience expert. Today I have with me Leonida Combo. She's a brand communications and marketing expert with over 8 years experience enabling brands to tell stories through strategic content, and she's also a customer life cycle marketing expert and a branding and campaigns expert. Welcome, Leonida.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I don't think I could have done it any better.
I'm so excited to have you here because marketing and customer experience gels in so many ways.
So many.
In some organizations, you can't tell them apart.
Very, very true. Actually, as a marketing professional or a communications professional, you'll always be working with the customer success teams throughout. So your teams are very much, very tight.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with this.
Yeah. Tell us about your exciting endeavors working as a Pan-African marketing comms and branding specialist.
Thank you so much for asking. So I've had the privilege of working with amazing companies, mostly within Kenya's tech space. So I've worked, for example, in health tech most recently, where I was able to create collateral, over 207 assets that were able to guide all our stakeholders along our customer lifecycle and basically direct them to use our products. So I was able to support the onboarding of over 15,000, actually 10,000 in this particular case, over 10,000 members who are able to access affordable healthcare.
Yeah.
And I've also worked within the customer experience space. That's actually where we met.
Yeah.
So within that particular company, we had some very lovely ventures. For example, there was a major telco that we were working with in Nigeria. And one of the initiatives that we worked on was a go-to-market strategy that actually trained small business owners. So SME owners were being taught about how to utilize customer experience to, grow their businesses. And we were able to reach over 21,000 businesses. So this little girl sitting in Kenya was able to, impact the lives of those people.
Yeah.
As a result, we got over 6,300 downloads. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. So working with two major markets, such as the ones that you have mentioned,
Yes.
Nigeria in West Africa, Kenya in East Africa, and then of course expanding into other markets in the same region.
Yes.
I'm sure there are some of those key takeaways about the kind of customer, how that customer is served, and how to navigate that customer through very specific journey points.
Yes.
And before I even go into those journey points, can you tell if there's a discrete difference between the consumer or the customer in West Africa versus the one in East Africa?
Well, definitely there were some distinct things. So, for example, every marketer knows this. You need to create personas of every type of customer, archetype of a customer that you're working with. Because, again, each market, for example, has very unique needs. And also, culturally, there are some things within certain areas that will take precedence over others, depending on what market you're in. So I'd say, from my observation with the Nigerian market, Nigerians really love hype. They love color. They love, things that are buzzy, trending. Whereas Kenyans, you appeal to them honestly more on practicality rather than, hype. A Kenyan will not really buy so much into hype, but for Nigeria, if you're not looking fun, you're out.
Oh wow, that's a good one. I'll take that with me.
Yeah.
So now let's go through the customer life cycle. Let's break it up. Because I know some of the conversations that we have that are very common in areas of synergies with marketing and customer experience has to do with the literal customer journey.
Yes.
And how we can proactively enable our customers to receive value from the brand, and the business can also attain value in terms of those interactions. So let's start with how and when customers become aware of a brand. Because we know, depending on an archetype, they may just discover your brand because it's part of their network. They may discover your brand because you have out of home advertising along a route that they commonly use.
Yes.
They may discover your brand digitally because they went on a search journey and they came upon an ad.
That's very true. Actually, what you're describing perfectly fits what you ultimately start a customer journey with. Or even now, in the case of, in marketing, you'd call it, a customer life cycle or a marketing funnel. The very first thing that you start with is awareness. So, how did these people find out about us? You have things that you call channels. It could be, did they discover you online via perhaps social media? Did they discover you through organically searching for you on search engines like Google? You have to be able to map out all of those. And actually, in customer experience, customer journey mapping, I know, is very key.
Yes.
So, the way that you map out all your touch points is exactly how, even in marketing, because you have to understand how your funnel works. So based on that, you have to figure out where is that particular archetype of a stakeholder, and they're not only customers. You also have several other stakeholders
in the ecosystem.
You may be working with, your partners; those are also stakeholders. You're working with investors also, because remember all those reports and everything that you're doing to do with fundraising, investors. And by the way, I'm so proud to say that was actually one of the things I worked on, my proudest moments. Being able to help with fundraising upwards of $3 million. That's something I was able to do, obviously, because you understand this funnel and you're able to also report on how you got all this value for each of these stakeholders. So now, as you can see, all these different stakeholders, you have to map out where you're likely to engage with them at the very beginning, and then all the way down to the very last stage, which we'll be talking about.
Yeah. So then there's the channels, like you said.
Yes.
And wanting to find out of a birthed curiosity to understand where are our customers that come through a certain channel progressing into. And I know for myself right now, when just recently, let me give you an example of a purchase journey that I've had. I'll be traveling later on in the week, and I need an outfit. Us ladies, we just always need something new. We always need something new for an event. For an event. So I said to myself, I would need something that's grand. I'm attending a gala dinner. And it's been a couple of years since I've shopped for very good pieces that I could put on for a gala dinner.
Yes.
And I decided to ask 3 or 4 of my stylish friends. And I said, give me an inspo, give me something. And they did. And then I asked one of my makeup artists, and she said to me, there's a shop near where I work. Come check them out. You never know. And I didn't go there physically. I first went to their Instagram handle.
Yes.
So that's my entry point. I've found out about them because someone in my network has told me about them. They haven't had a shopping experience with them, but from the look of the brand, this might be what you want.
It draws you in, and honestly, it can make or break you. What you've actually described is actually what branding is. Because a lot of people mistake branding to mean, a logo or colors. But branding is exactly what you've described, what is the look and feel of this place? Does it feel luxurious? Does it feel, there are several things that you consider in branding. And actually, in the awareness phase of things, that could even become a blocker for your company.
For you to progress,
even as you're trying to onboard these people. So I'll give you an example of something that I've done previously where I worked. So remember how I told you I was in the health tech space. So the company that I was working on had come up with a partnership with a really large insurer here in Kenya. However, there was a bottleneck in terms of, how did they want this product to be identified as? So we had to come up with a framework that would allow us to co-brand ourselves. And I had been able to, design this framework. And without that framework in place, honestly, there was just going to be a gridlock because there was a lot of conflict around it. So when we agreed on how we were going to present this product, so our client, or rather our partner, had wanted to be the leading brand, and so we had to, obviously, all the communication across the entire life cycle had to be planned for and accounted for and created according to this new branding structure. And of course, the way we were marketing the product was a bit different because we had our own pricing model. But remember, now you've partnered with this other brand, you need to also inject some of their brand messaging. You have to inject some of, perhaps the pricing model is different. So those are some of the things now as a marketer you have to look into when you're working on the awareness phase. If you're partnering with someone, you have to consider how are you doing your co-branding, or perhaps you want to white label completely.
Yes.
There's so many factors you have to think about even before you write a single email or make a flyer
that goes out to other stakeholders.
Yes. How are you presenting your brand?
So now in the what I call consideration, and for me it was comparison, back to my buying the dress for a gala dinner.
Yes.
I was not only looking at that one Instagram page, I then started to search, and of course the algorithms around social media platforms will start to bring you more and more content depending on your search.
Yes, that's very true.
Yes, remember I also have inspos from other friends. It's influencing what I get to see. And so I decide there's a WhatsApp number here, let me chat the brand. And they were very responsive. For me, that's a plus.
Yes.
Because if you have WhatsApp as a channel, you cannot take more than a couple of hours to respond. You shouldn't.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is us saying to brands, if you have a WhatsApp number, please make sure that someone's
is key.
Yes, and there's a reason why I went to WhatsApp. I didn't call, I didn't send a direct message on Instagram. There's a reason I went to WhatsApp. Saved your number intentionally and decided to chat you. And so I sent them a screen grab of something I'd seen on their page, and I said, this is what I want. But of course, there are concerns around my height versus my size in comparison to the model that's wearing that item on their website.
Actually, you're reminding me of something that's very key. When you were talking about, for example, how much time do you take to respond?
Yeah.
These are actually, in customer experience, I've forgotten the correct term for me, you'll help me with it. But you have to have like a procedure that you've agreed to as a company in terms of, for example, how after 2 rings, a phone should be answered.
Yes.
Within 4 hours or within, an hour, an email must be responded to. You have to have those rules in place. Otherwise, it's going to be hectic. And remember, at the end of the line, whoever is calling is, like you said, this person is actually actively considering buying this product. And honestly, those are the points. Yeah, they have options. At that point, if you've not figured out your game, this person is going to leave. And so now from a marketing perspective, the consideration stage is very important. This is ideally the place where you'd also, come in and educate these people on what value they're likely to get from you. So this is where, for example, you'd have your case studies come in, show success metrics, show testimonials from actual customers or other people who meet the same archetype so that they can feel like, oh, okay, this is the value that I'm likely to get. Always remember, your service or your product is being used essentially as a tool by that other person to get success. So
there's a goal that they have.
Yeah. So it's not about you really. Like you said, they have options. They can go elsewhere and get the same thing. But if you had communicated well to them about the value that they're likely to receive at your company, your brand, then you now move them into the next phase,
which is they need to purchase.
Yes.
They need to not only have made a purchase decision, but they need to part with some form of value, and that is usually
Yes.
monetary
Yes.
in terms of exchange.
Yeah.
So now you've won them over and they're making a decision.
Mhm.
I am a sucker for friction at checkout.
Mhm.
Oh my word. Who in this day and age does not ensure a seamless payment process where I'm either viewing my invoice, making my payment, receiving a notification about the receipt of my payment,
Yes.
being emailed a receipt or some form of evidence of my payment, and also payment options.
Yes.
Do you know I was on a website and they did not have M-Pesa as a payment option? In Kenya, you are selling to a Kenyan and do not have M-Pesa as a payment option.
The interesting thing about what you brought up, in a sense, can go back to company culture. So I think the best way, for example, for leadership, for example, to make sure that the culture in the company is different is, of course, you don't just get a customer-centric culture out of nowhere. Unfortunately, some things just have to start from the top. And how it starts, for example, people can be educated a bit more about things like, of course, human-centered design.
Yes.
Just making sure that everything that you're doing and at every step, it's called actually design thinking. If you don't have that mode of thinking or you're not exposed to that, you may not even notice that there's an issue with your process.
There's a friction point.
Yes. What you're actually describing, the kind of training that we do, at that time we would mostly talk, for example, about the NPS, Net Promoter Score metric. But, there's several other metrics that you can use, for example, to identify where that friction is coming from along each of those touch points.
Yes.
And now for a marketer, how we look at those different touch points is, and at this stage we're talking about consideration, yeah? So depending on what channel you've used, you need to go back to your data, your analytics, and identify where are these bottlenecks. So like right now, I'm actually consulting for a company that's having an issue with this exact same thing. The issue that they're having is that people don't seem to actually understand what the product is about. So they get into the website, they find a very interesting, product, and they even consider onboarding. But now they get stuck because perhaps somebody has abandoned they didn't complete the registration for this service that they're actually supposed to pay for, but they didn't understand the value. So what should push them further? And here's a misconception about marketing. People think marketing is about, drumming noise into people's ears. On board, finish, complete your order, finish this purchase. It's not about that. What you need to be doing during that onboarding phase is communicating the value. That's how these people are going to move further in. And that's the thing that now unlocks those purchases. Because in all honesty, let me actually give a very perfect example of something that we encountered as well at the health tech company. So we'd find, for example, we were trying to onboard, say, spouses and children of the primary holder of the insurance. What would happen is sometimes in the early phases we would assume maybe it's not clear to them how the flow of the onboarding works on the app. So our initial marketing communication had a lot of just do this, put your dependent's name here, then put this other thing here, then do this other thing here. But then what we'd notice is that if still, in as much as we were sharing that collateral, still, it wasn't really, moving the needle. Guess what changed? So what we figured was, wait a second. Remember, your customers are intelligent people. Of course, they know how to use apps. This is not the first app they've used. The reason why they're not adding the dependent or anybody is because they don't understand the journey, or perhaps the issue was they thought, oh wait, How will I be billed exactly? There's so many questions in their head. It's not about the flow of the product. So don't show them actually step by step, download, I don't know, click here, then do this. It's more about those other questions they have in their mind. What value will my spouse or my other dependents derive from this service? What is the value that I'll get? So, for example, instead of talking about, move to just put your spouse's name here, insert here, we talk about things like, the value that your spouse would get, of course, is that you're using the same, maybe you're using a doctor who is familiar with your family.
The family history.
Yeah, that you get a family doctor. Now imagine all those services, including nutritionists, including all these other, medical staff. You have all of them and you can easily access them within minutes. So now when you communicate that, suddenly
there's no hesitation.
Why should I, have to go all the way to, probably a physical place and queue for hours at the reception? Now we've actually showed you, we're shortening your time, and so on and so forth. And then likewise, like I said, with marketing, there are several stakeholders. So it's not just the customer. It's also those are still customers. The end user is the customer. Then with the B2B, you also have the actual person paying
for the use of
the service.
Yes.
So now in that case, you also have to understand. So for this head of HR who is purchasing this product, now you see even the way you're positioning the value to them is different. For the member, we're telling them, reduce wait time. You have a whole team, a medical team you can access within minutes. But for HR, we're telling them a whole different story. We're telling them how, for example, now your staff will be more productive. We're telling them how, they're going to perhaps reduce on some costs in some areas. So now you see, like, you also can't be sharing the same message with everyone, which is why we were saying you have to start off by identifying, these customer profiles, and understanding
who your stakeholders
for each of them.
Who your stakeholders are. Nita, in the story that you've given, you've also spoken a lot more about the other part of the customer life cycle, which is the onboarding. And speaking value to the customer so that they are able to have an understanding of how to use their product and the service, not only for themselves, but also for their dependents in this case.
Yes.
Everyone else, we are now having a joint onboarding of sorts. Did you get a prompt to validate that it was you? Do you now access the app as well when you're using it for medical care? Yes. Did you receive this, that, the other on your profile? So now the onboarding is snowballing. It's not only the primary benefactor or user, it's now across board. And then it's colleague to colleague, because it will be, have you downloaded the app? Oh, you haven't. Have you registered your spouses? Oh, really? What you do is, so now the onboarding has been simplified. There's a part of it that encompasses self-service. So you're having to do it on your own, and you're educating other users on behalf of the organization. So this, in a sense, is marketing done by the customer themselves. And they're enabled, they're empowered to do it by themselves. So here we go into engagement, continued engagement. So the customer has onboarded, they're here, they're with us, they've made their first purchase, or at least they've done their first transaction. Let's talk, how do you keep me engaged? I have at least 50 apps on my phone, and at any one time I may not need health insurance, for example, or I may not want to read a book. So I am an avid reader, and there's apps. There's apps for reading, there's apps for consuming summaries, there's apps for teaching languages. There's all
multiple resources.
There's all this manner of apps on my phone, and some do go dormant or unused for a while. and some get used for more than 30 minutes cumulatively in a whole
It's called
day.
the age of information for a reason.
So what do we do as marketers, as customer experience professionals, to make sure that during that white space that you don't need us necessarily, we're still engaging you as a customer?
And allow me to backtrack for a minute, because there's something that you actually mentioned previously that still ties to the phase just before this one, where we're talking about onboarding. There's something that you had said about creating a seamless experience. Sometimes it literally means also guiding your customer along the path. And there's something that you had also mentioned about like how with helping your customers self-serve. The whole point is to make it way easier for people to actually use your service. So all these bottlenecks are still there and you're not resolving them, it's going to be a problem. Perhaps if there's a part of your UI or UX that's complicated, now that's a product issue that needs to be worked on. But there's so many ways, for example, you can guide your customers along. For example, if it's an app, instead of just going immediately to the dashboard or the home page, take some time to add some images in there, like at the very beginning, that would educate your customers on the value that they're receiving. So that instead of just getting into the app and it's like, bam, okay, enter your password. Okay, fine, password. Have something that shows them, get XX within minutes. Get whatever. Show them like it should feel like a dream every day.
Yes.
So even as they're getting on the app, it kind of reminds them. It's a trigger. It reminds them subconsciously why they're using the app or the thing. And now moving into your next question, actually, which was about engagement. Engagement, by this, is super important. A lot of people take for granted how, they feel like, the customer is already here. In Swahili, you could say, wako tu ndani, yani wako ndani. So that means, the customer's already here. So you just feel a sense of, you should never feel complacent, ever. Because this customer, just because they're there today, does not necessarily, it doesn't guarantee renewal.
No, it doesn't.
So what you should be doing is on a regular basis, make them feel a sense of, what's happening in the industry, what's changing, what are some things within, their space that will affect them, for example, impact them either positively or negatively, depending on how they go about, doing their work. Obviously, you want to insert yourself as the solution every single time. So, for example, so we were working within the customer experience space. I'm very proud to have actually launched one of the I worked on one of the first customer experience reports in Kenya.
Yes.
So I was able to work on 16 editions of this report, and we'd cover various industries, spanning all the way from energy, hospitality, what do you call this, the medical field as well. And within each of those industries, we would basically feed them information on what's changing in their sector, in their industry, what are some things that they need to look out for, what are some things that they need to do. So this report was done strategically on a quarterly basis, because obviously things keep changing. Like you said earlier, I think before we even started this podcast, we were saying how things move, things change, they're so dynamic. Perhaps there's a trick in the book that would have made you, it would have been a key differentiator and it would have worked for you. For example, deliveries. So right now, a lot of companies or services have some form of, they've integrated some form of, delivering their services, or, they have some sort of online platform that, helps them sell their wares. So now that will not be a differentiating factor for you anymore, my dear. In 2025,
it's a basic requirement.
Basic requirement.
And you'll hear customers ask, so do you deliver? Because the expectation is convenience.
Precisely.
Meet me where I'm at and get the items to me. And you'll hear Some companies say it comes at a cost, thinking that that is a hindrance, or thinking that that's a form of inconvenience. And customers are saying, I'm willing to pay a little bit extra for that convenience. It would have cost me a lot more in terms of opportunity. There's something else I would rather do with my time.
That's true.
Than be on transit to you to pick this one item and then be on transit back. So if you're going to send me a rider who's probably going to take a shorter time at half, if not a quarter of the cost that it would have been on my end, plus I can use that time to do something else. The currency of convenience. We do not mind paying a little bit more on top of my previous spend just to make sure that you can get the item to me. And like you're saying, it's now becoming a basic, such that it can influence the purchase decision. And if you're not able to deliver to me, then let me get someone else whom I can buy from who would deliver.
And this is actually why I'd highly encourage someone. So you see this engagement phase that we're talking about, you have to use tools, for example, to help you identify, both from a customer experience aspect and also a marketing aspect. You need to use tools that enable you to actually identify, and this is actually a research thing, you have to be able to identify those driving factors that will actually cause your customers to either purchase your product or even leave your product altogether. So it's not just about the operations, improving the operations of your company. It's also about being able to communicate more effectively to these people. So if you already have identified that this is where this particular customer finds value, use that narrative through and through. And like we said, things are dynamic. They keep changing. You can't use the same narrative forever because in some cases you may find now other businesses are also offering the same thing. So how do you differentiate yourself? So you're constantly that engagement thing. And now some people may ask, okay, what does engagement look like? Because as experts, sometimes we tend to do this thing where we understand the works. So we'll speak so high level. But like literally, if I come back down and show you an example of what engagement collateral would look like, it would be something as simple as, for example, in the healthcare industry that I was mentioning earlier, I have this customer, it's a captive customer, but what am I doing for them on a regular basis to make sure that they're somehow hearing from me regularly? And here's another problem, by the way, that a lot of customers or rather companies have, is that during the engagement phase, you can either make it or break it based on how you also, your marketing should also take into account that you shouldn't also overdo it with the messaging, for example. If you over-engage them, that could also be too much. And maybe if you are texting them, for example, about, we have a sale on this date, you have to also have protocols in place that limit, for example, how often you speak to these people. So you have to have like a member, like a member management sort of system, so that a campaign management system that basically helps you understand, okay, so we spoke to this group of people, let's not bug them with too much information. So if I'm sending, for example, a newsletter, that's another form of engaging people. This newsletter shouldn't also be sent too frequently to a point that you're bugging people. You have a newsletter, you have a webinar every 2 days.
Like they say, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes. So that's a point where I'd say be very careful as well. Even as you're trying to get these people, you're trying so hard to add value. But remember also, what you said, familiarity breeds contempt.
Now let's go to loyalty. We've said from the very beginning, customers have options. You are not the only brand that's trying to sell me a shoe. You're not the only brand with that brand of a shoe in my size. And so further along the line, I have made a purchase. I have paid for the delivery, the item has come to me, I've spotted the shoe for a couple of, occasions, and you're constantly engaging me with the latest shoes that you have in stock. I'm super curious about the next visit to your shop. But here's the thing, I'm not only buying shoes from you.
Yes, that's true.
And my loyalty, if my understanding of loyalty is, you are the one and the only that I come to for that product, no matter how you price it, you're my one and only.
Precisely.
Those days have ended. Loyalty is not guaranteed.
Not at all.
And brands need to understand what the loyalty program that they've created might suit their operational processes, but is not necessarily saying or telling the customer that you're valuable to us.
Yes. And now, this is where, loyalty programs, I'd say, they take many forms, for example. Most of us are familiar, for example, the loyalty card in a store, point system. But there's also other ways, especially, for example, in a B2B setup, where you could create more value for your customers. Perhaps when they reach a certain level and they've, been your customers long enough, now you can actually unlock some sort of discount for them. Or if, don't be stingy, by the way. This is how you retain that relationship, because retention is really, at this point, it's about that relationship, retaining that relationship. That's what you're doing. So you have to treat this person, remember, they have an alternative.
They do.
So be sticky. Figure out areas where you can probably add more value for that person without charging them for it. Perhaps if it's a report, so like what I'm used to is, for example, there'd be certain levels of reports that we do. Personally, I've also worked on different co-branding frameworks for different types of companies, depending on where we sat with them. So, for example, the more premium members would get, they'd have what we'd call the premium co-branding. So, like, all their work that we were doing with them would be presented to the T in their colors, in their, with their messaging and all that. Whereas maybe the more standard customers received a totally different package, which was more balanced. It wasn't as much, their brand. So those are just some of the things. And those co-branding frameworks, it depends a lot on how your business model works anyway. But the point is, you are trying to show, you're trying to create more value for these people. Sorry, Bella, 1 second. I'm trying to remember the question. That's the problem.
Loyalty. There was no question. We're just going.
Yeah,
let's go. So there's the bit about the loyalty program, and there's the bit about keeping you engaged. Like they're locked. They're locked in to say, what can I do so that you, at any one time, you're top of mind. That brand is top of mind. I have options, but you're top of mind. And I like what you said about unlocking value. From the aspect of, I think the lady that I like what you said, Nida, about unlocking value, because sometimes it's in the exclusivity. It's in the making the customer feel that they are special, that they've unlocked some form of value that's just theirs.
Precisely.
And everyone likes to be treated in a special way. Everyone wants to know or to understand that somebody else has seen them, has heard them, and is unlocking value for them. Now, if I'm a loyal customer who is consistently engaged, and I've had a very good experience with multiple deliveries and seamless, frictionless purchase journeys with your brand, ever since I found out about you, I am telling everyone about it.
Precisely. This literally brings us to the very last stage of the funnel, which is advocacy. So, your customers at this point actually selling your brand themselves. And how do you get that? Of course, they have to be loyal first for them to move into this other stage. So how are some ways that you can do this? We were actually having this conversation about how Customer Experience Week is coming up.
Yes.
And I was just saying, guys, let's get creative. I know we love cake and, we love dishing out cake. Personally, that's how I started, customer experience programs myself. But let's be honest. This is a very deep and impactful stage of that funnel. You need to find out how can you actually add value to these people in such a way that either advances their career, makes them look good in front of other people, gives them more visibility in the spaces or circles within their profession, or find out other ways to position them so highly. Let me tell you, it's just a human kind of common sense thing. If somebody makes you look big or whispers your name in a room of big opportunities, obviously you're going to want to work with this person. Some ways that I've seen, and let me give you examples of real life things that were done to create a level of advocacy. I've worked in places where literally we would identify our customers, like our longest standing customers. We would actually put them on panel sessions, fly them in a plane to a different country where they would be industry leaders. You see, we're building this person's portfolio, we're building this person's, career and, their exposure generally. And then on top of that, there's other initiatives that I've seen being done. Personally, what I did in my space is during my time at the customer experience company, I would identify some of our longest standing customers and our most important partners. And we would actually highlight these people. I would use all my media partnerships, and I was lucky to partner with 10 plus media outlets to, put their stories out there. And so suddenly it came from just, you being a customer to suddenly you have a story about how this hospital is doing an amazing job, or how this energy company has gotten, X amount of, created value to their community, those kind of things. So when you put this person on a pedestal, honestly, why wouldn't they like you? And that's another thing I think I figured out in my field is a hack. In marketing, people usually have a problem because they can't really distinguish the difference between a testimonial and a case study. They sound very similar, but they're two very different things. So a testimonial could be a simple comment about, so you kept telling me about the place, where you're trying to buy your clothes, for example. So a testimonial could be, you would say, oh, I love the designs that these people make. They're really beautiful. That's a testimonial. It's just a quote. But a case study would be something deeper, where you're actually trying to show the metrics, the success metrics behind how that brand has succeeded. For example, we'll talk about these people are able to deliver within X period of time. They are able to work with you to conceptualize maybe the design of a dress that you want. If it's a custom order, this is typically how much time they take, those kind of things. So now when you put those numbers out there, let me tell you, people respond better to numbers. So even in your marketing communication, and that's one of the things I'm also working with somebody, I'm consulting with them right now on that, is helping them create more impactful communication that actually integrates the success metrics into the work that they're doing. So, for example, remember how I was telling you that we're doing this onboarding, basically some email automation project with them. So what you'd notice is that it's the thing I was saying. It's not that customers don't understand, how to get onboarded. They know. They're just not doing it because they don't see what's in it for them. So within each of our communications, we have made sure to include at least one success metric from previous customers. We've also highlighted other customers, And funny thing, it's almost like you're achieving two things at once. So you're still on this other side of the funnel with the new customers. You're trying to help the new ones on board. But for this other customer, you've created value for them because you've positioned them also as an industry expert. They know their thing. They're doing so well. They're thriving. You're publishing them. You're making videos on them. They're feeling nice. They're experts, and everybody out there is seeing the story. They're gaining more visibility. With visibility and all these success metrics comes what? Trust.
Yes.
And that's the thing that helps you also gain more customers. So now you see, it's almost like this funnel we're talking about. I mean, it's full circle. That's also why we call it a customer life cycle.
Yes.
So from all the way to start to, the awareness section, all the way down to the advocacy part, there's things that will they'll have some, parallels.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've loved what you said about the understanding of what's in it for them. At the end of the day, when you want to sell someone on an idea or a concept, they must see what's in it for them, not just what's in it for you. And once they've conceptualized that there's value in there for me, I mean, the decision making becomes a lot easier. The second thing I've loved about what you said is success needs to be quantified. Put a number to it. People respond better to metrics. You quantify it and you show evidence in form of quantified metrics, then you've sold. You've sold. Everyone's in on the idea. I want to become part of that success story. I want to experience those same metrics for my business. It's been so wonderful speaking with you, Nida.
Thank you.
It feels like we need to do a lot more of this, and I'm very sure our audience is going to send commentary and follow-up questions, not to mention examples from what they've seen and they've experienced with other brands. It's been great speaking with you. What are your last comments? And tell us more about where we can find you. Which handles can we find you?
Thank you so much, Bella, first of all, for having me here. I think we've had an amazing conversation, and definitely we need to come back and probably, extend this and do another one. So you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Leonida Combo. And yes, follow up, ask me those questions, and let's see how we can partner and, help you with your customer experience / marketing needs.
Awesome. All right, guys, until next time, thank you to Steve and SOP Podcast team. I remain Rosebella Bock, your global customer experience expert. Bye.